I swear, every time I think I like a faction, they do something douchey. Hi everyone! So today I'm going to be discussing Insurgent by Veronica Roth. I was blown away! It picked up right where Divergent left off, and it did everything it set out to. Their factions were more fleshed out, the character development was raw and realistic and painful, and I loved it. And yet again, we get another gorgeous cover. I mean, look at this. Amity's got style. In short, I've got to give Insurgent 5 out of 5 stars. I did have a few issues with it that I will touch on later, but let me just say, this series is phenomenal and the sequel did not disappoint. So now I'm going to get into spoilers, so if you haven't read, please leave and come back and then we can discuss. Bye! This is a sequel done right. The whole point of a sequel is to further develop the characters and peel back their layers, see what they're made of. After reading, I realized I've been romanticizing Triss quite a lot in Divergent, which is an extremely sucky thing of me to do. Insurgent made me realize just how deeply flawed she is as a character, and I loved it. In reality, Triss has only really been free to be herself for about 2 months of her entire life. The 2 months since she's left Abnegation and become part of Dauntless and this whole war started. And now that she's flung into all these crazy stressful situations, she has PTSD and survivor's guilt, and all these new facets to her personality are coming through for possibly the first time. Triss is arrogant, reckless, vindictive, stubborn, hot-tempered, and has major trust issues, although Tobias and her friends did call her out on all of her crap throughout the book. That scene in the elevator with Triss after Marlene died stunned me. We got a glimpse of all the internal anger and frustration, and just watching her flip out like that in the elevator was kind of terrifying, seeing her lose control like that just for even a minute. And Tobias was right. Triss was so sick with guilt over the frustration of losing all these people that they loved and all the things that were slipping out of her control that she became so needlessly reckless, and it was like she was punishing herself most of the time. I mean, I could see her logic on a lot of her snap judgments, and her intentions were in the right place, but it was so frustrating to see her fall apart like this. When she was on that table in the Erudite compound, and it finally hit her that she was going to die and Tobias had to watch, I had to set down the book because I couldn't read through my tears. She had this moment of clarity where she realized she doesn't want to die. She wants to make all those deaths that she was responsible for mean something. She wants to celebrate their lives and not just throw hers away. That was outstanding character development for her when she spent the entire book beating herself up to the point where she was standing on a ledge and about to kill herself. From then on, I trusted Triss's judgment a lot more. You could actually see that she was trying to mend her relationships and move forward with her life, and I got that sense of hope back from her. But let's go back to the beginning. So we started in Amity, of all places, and everyone there is really chill and safe and free and equal in their faction, and I'm like, okay, what could be so bad about that? And then we find out that they're being slipped a peace serum every day, and that their whole piece is a huge rotten lie, and I felt so betrayed. I really appreciated the Amity chapters because they gave us that comic relief we desperately needed after the way Divergent left off. Like when Triss punched Peter in the bullet wound. So they had to give her this peace serum to calm her down, but they gave her way too much, and she was high out the wazoo. She was skipping around and giggling and making just a damn fool of herself, and I was dying with laughter reading Tobias's responses and how horrified he was. So then we move on to Candor, and I'm like, you know, everyone there is honest and upfront, and maybe that can be uncomfortable sometimes, but I think I'm going to really enjoy them, because quickest way for any book to make me angry is for poor communication skills between characters to be a major plot point. Use your words and talk about Will before everything gets way worse than it needs to be. How hard is that? How hard is that? That whole interrogation scene was terrifying and just ruined Candor for me. I couldn't handle being forced to tell everyone the worst parts of myself in public to strangers, and watching Tobias humiliated and have to admit to his father's abuse killed me. Triss and Tobias' relationship was really put through the ringer this book. Triss had all this guilt over Will she didn't feel like she could confide in Tobias about, which is stupid. I mean, he still would have loved her. But then Tobias had that whole thing with his crazy mom he didn't feel like he could tell her about, and neither of them could tell the truth to save their lives. Granted, Tobias' lies were lies of omission, and Triss's were more bold-faced lies to his face. I genuinely didn't know if they were going to make it through this book together. It really surprised me that it came to the point where they had to give each other ultimatums. Tobias was all like, if you keep needlessly risking your life, we're done because I don't want to watch you fall apart. I love you too much. And later, Triss's was, if you really love me, you'll trust me and believe me that I wouldn't have betrayed you unless it was for a damn good reason. And despite how much they both resented the my way or the highway option, it worked out, and I was so glad for that. And this book did such a great job of showing why Triss and Tobias work so well together, and again, I'll just cite the Amity chapters. Triss was so understanding to Tobias regarding his trauma with his dad, and would get immediately protective, whether it meant jumping between him and his scumbag dad and being a literal barrier between them, or just sitting and quietly holding his hand and listening because that's what he needed. And Tobias was surprisingly gentle and willing to open up to Triss this book. He rarely asked questions when she'd have a panic attack, and he'd just do his best to comfort her, like when she came to him in the middle of the night and they ended up spooning in bed. And I loved seeing Tobias get angry on Triss's behalf about the peace serum. At the end of the day, they just work. Triss and Tobias are unwaveringly loyal to each other and fiercely in love, despite each other's many flaws. This might actually be one of the healthiest relationships I've read about in a long time, and that's a little worrying now that I hear it out loud. Okay, random thoughts. Just before Triss stabbed him, I got this sick satisfaction out of Eric saying that she was the best attack dog they have, and I was like, yeah, someone acknowledges her, but it's not a compliment and it's coming from Eric, but I'm taking it anyway. That whole side story with Uriah, Lynn, and Marlene. Lynn has consistently been one of my favorite characters in the series, and I loved her reasoning to why she shaved her head back in Initiation. When she was dying and she admitted that she was in love with Marlene too, I just started to cry. I'd had a hunch before. I didn't think that she was in love with Uriah, but hearing her say it out loud on her deathbed, oh, it hit me like a truck. How awful it must have been watching her two best friends fall in love without her. Okay, weird thought alert, but Triss's time in the Erudite compound paralleled the abnegation initiation. Think about it. It was so subtle. Tobias told her to endure just 2 more weeks, and the whole abnegation initiation process takes 2 weeks. After Triss and Tobias escaped and he takes her back to his home, he washes her feet for her and cleans the glass out. In the initiation process, the abnegation leaders wash the feet publicly of all the new initiates. And then in the morning, Triss shared breakfast with the factionless, and they passed the cans around in a big circle to share. Whereas in the initiation process, you serve everyone on your left in a big circle. I don't know, it's kind of flimsy, but it just caught my attention. Peter. When Triss turned herself into the Erudite and he became her escort, their banter made me smile when I wanted to cry. At one point when Triss was mocking Janine and it made Peter laugh, I had to take a step back because when the fuck did Peter become a comforting presence in this series? I hate him. He's sadistic. He kills without remorse. He uses people. He treats everything like it's a zero-sum game, and he's a certifiable psychopath. But he saved Triss's life, and so I will say it once. Thank you, Peter Hayes. Now go fuck yourself. I only really had 2 major issues with this book, and one of them I touched upon before. All of the lies and secrets between Triss and Tobias made me want to scream. So much could have been avoided if Triss and Tobias had just been upfront with each other and more trusting, and it frustrates me to no end that the solution to one of the biggest problems in this entire book was honesty. It made sense for the plot and the characters being who they are, but I sincerely hope that we are past all these frustrating and petty miscommunications as major plot devices. My biggest problem was the ending. The entire story, they are teasing at some earth-shattering secret that the abnegation were willing to die for, that Janine was willing to murder hundreds of people for, and then we find out that their entire city is an isolated experiment. Who set up the city? How long has this been going on? Are they still watching? How could they just sit by and watch a genocide happen? And while it definitely has me interested in Allegiant, I wish we'd had a better payoff for all of our struggling throughout Insurgent. Overall, Insurgent is a 5-star book. The characters went through tremendous character growth and are stronger for it. The world building was phenomenal and the factions were fleshed out in such an interesting way. I am so psyched for Allegiant because I'm a masochist like that. Anyway, thanks for watching. Bye!